Welcome. Thank you for watching this video. I'd like to talk about begin to talk about my journey with anxiety. It's been quite an adventure, and I think the purpose of this video is really, well, I know it is twofold. One, just to share an experience with you. I think some people find that if they can commiserate or find common ground with someone, knowing they're not alone, there's a lot of one common symptom of anxiety and panic is that people will believe that they're, quote, going crazy, which I don't think is a technical scientific diagnosis. I've done some research in social psych myself. I don't think it's a technical diagnosis, but it's a fear we've all had before. And when you hear how common and how textbook the anxiety symptoms are to everyone who goes through it, it makes you feel and recognize that there's nothing exceptional about what you're going through. That just another person, just another day with anxiety. People get treated for it, so can I. Right? I'm not that outlier case that's not going to be able to handle this well. The other case, or the other point of this video, is to talk to people who are going through something and thinking, could this be anxiety? And I'll do more videos dedicated to that later on in terms of like symptoms and stuff. But the answer I'm going to give you, spoiler alert, is yes. As I'll talk about later in my story, I talked to when I was getting diagnosed, I had a meeting with an appointment with a neurologist, a very good one. I believe the best in the city, which isn't like, oh, I'm so rich, I see the best, because I'm certainly not. But just my family doctor, that was the neurologist he knew, so that's who he got me in to see. I was very lucky. Anyway, I asked him, could it be anxiety? What I'm going through, I listed a host of physical symptoms, and it was just yes, 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 yes. Anxiety can mimic virtually anything physical. So the answer is already yes, but you probably want to hear more about why. So where did this start? Well, I think anyone with anxiety or mental illness could probably retrace the steps of their life and find it throughout their life. So I'm not going to give you a whole life history. It starts briefly in 2011, where I'm getting these feelings of dizziness randomly throughout the day. This is right about the time I'm about to finish my bachelor's degree, wrapping up college. And I go and see my doctor, and I'm like, hey, I'm getting dizzy all the time. What's going on here? Vertigo symptoms, right? Kind of dizziness / vertigo. And he tells me, you seem a little tightly wound. You seem anxious. And but also your blood pressure is high. So it could be anxiety, or it could be like your blood pressure, that you're having high blood pressure and then it's like dropping. I was obese at the time, if I recall. So that comes with heavy weight. And so he gives me blood pressure medication and Xanax. I don't like the Xanax, although the first day I take both, I'm feeling great. And I take them both for a while, and then it goes away, and then I stop. And I don't remember how I stopped, but don't read anything into that, especially if you're on Xanax or something like that. You need to taper, in a medically supervised taper. So I'm not going to provide any details on that because I don't remember it. I don't want to influence anyone in their behaviors with Xanax or any medication. But during that same period of time, I lost a considerable amount of weight, and my blood pressure goes back to normal. So I'm convinced that it was the blood pressure thing. Why? Because I had nothing in my life that I was really nervous about. So that's how I think of anxiety, right? That you're sitting around anxious and sweating about something on your mind. And I thought, well, symptoms can come from that, but I'm just having symptoms without the source. And that's how I saw it. And I'm good for years after that. So one, you're thinking, can I recover from anxiety? Yes, I did, for no reason. It spontaneously got better. I would not count on that. It never spontaneously got better again in the future. So in 2013, it comes back. I am, again, consciously anxious of nothing. At this time, I'm wrapping up grad school. Here's a pattern, right? That you can be anxious about something in the back of your mind. Almost every time this comes to me, I am in a stage of transition. So at this point, I'm finishing grad school. I'm going to transition into a PhD program and move to another city. And I find that I'm getting dizziness and vertigo again, heavily. And for 8+ hours a day. Generally, it would strike me in the afternoon or early evening, and then it wouldn't go away until I woke up the next day. And then it would start again, and I go through this for months. I go and I see my doctor, and he says, he goes, dizziness. Well, like, that's the inner ear. Hold on. Can I drink tea through this thing? Taking my vitamins with some nice calming chamomile tea. Highly recommended. It does interact with some medications and maybe some conditions, so I don't know. Worth asking your doctor about that before you take it, but I find it very calming. Where was I? So I go back to the doctor, and he goes, you need to see an ENT. This is probably an inner ear problem. And I'm fully convinced. Scratching my upper lip, not picking my nose under my wrestler mask as I talk about this serious topic. He says, you need to go see the ENT. Get your inner ear checked out. So I go, and I believe him. And I get checked out. They run a number of tests. And I'm upset, though, because I am feeling this dizziness and this vertigo 8+ hours a day. This feels like torture. And they tell me, we'll have your results in 2 weeks. It's just standard. I think they probably have them a lot sooner than that, but they have the documentation and they go over them with you 2 weeks, and it's the way the system flows. And so this 2 weeks for me is very miserable, and I deteriorate mentally. Now, at this point, I'm accepting that there is some anxiety in my life, but it's not the root cause. It's that I have some health problem, and it feels like torture, so it's emotionally and mentally taxing on me. That's how I understand it at the time. I am also thinking that they are for certain going to find something, and it's going to be treatable, because my doctor said it's an inner ear problem, and inner ear problems aren't deadly. He said it's either this one, or this one. Here's the med for this one. Here's the med for that one. Here's the med for that one. So we'll find out which one it is. They have me on meclizine at the time, just this general anti-dizzy pill, and it does nothing for me. If anything, it makes me feel worse, so I stop. So I'm miserable with symptoms, but excited with anticipation, because I am absolutely certain that they're going to find something. I get in. I wait 2 weeks for the results. I get in, waiting for my silver bullet. Excited. At this point, though, I've deteriorated enough that my mother has come with me, and they say, "No, you're good." And I said, "No, I'm not." And I make this their problem, right? If it's not my ear, my nose, or my throat, it shouldn't be their problem. But I just freak, and I make it their problem. And I start throwing everything at them, like, this is what time of day it happens, and this is what makes it go away, and this is what doesn't make it go away, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, okay, we'll help you schedule a follow-up somewhere else. And there's a guy, I don't know if he's a physician's assistant, a nurse, or what he was. He wasn't the primary doctor, but he was extremely kind. And he was like, oh, yeah, I remember me. All right, come with me. We'll schedule you, go get someone else to check you out. And I go with him to what I presume is his office, and he gets on the phone, and he calls some NRI laboratory screening center. He says, yeah, I need to get a patient in, preferably tonight, as soon as possible. You got something tonight? Good. Okay. Brain tumor. And I nearly fall out of my chair, and he goes, and he tells me, no, I just told them that, so they would rush you in. I don't really think you have a brain tumor. And I'm not sure, and I don't know if I should believe him or not, right? Because he realizes that he just nearly gave me a heart attack. Maybe he wants to calm me down, or maybe he really believes that. I can't read minds. So I go in that night, and he's very sweet. He tells me, I'm just so blessed at this point to have this kind of a medical professional in my life. He says, I said, well, now I'm panicking because you're going to have me wait for a brain scan. And he goes, I will call the MRI center all day tomorrow and make them give me your results. So you will know it ASAP. And it's like approaching the end of the business day, almost 5 o'clock, and I'm like, it's not going to happen. At 4:30 they call and they tell me I'm fine. I fall to the floor and I pray and praise God that I don't have a brain tumor. And the symptoms don't go away, though, right? It's like, I'm so glad that I don't have brain cancer, but I am still dizzy all day long. And people start to mention anxiety to me, something to consider. And I'm like, okay, I'll consider it. But, I don't have anything that I'm worried about, or I didn't, that brought this along. So, now I'm just worried about what's wrong with me. But there's a chicken and egg problem here. The symptoms came first. So even if I'm anxious now, anxiety didn't cause this. And they say, they just tell me to consider it. And so I go back to my doctor all the time. And we go through a series of things, a series of tests. Well, let's see if it's your heart. Okay, let's go check out these scary heart problems. Let's see if it's, seizures or atypical migraines. Okay, something awfully wrong with my brain, and I get scanned for that. Let's see if it's something wrong on your blood vessels. Okay, another scanning of the veins in the heart. Let's see if it's something wrong with, some blood condition. All right, blood testing. And so this goes on for, if I recall correctly, a number of months. And I am deteriorating very quickly. I don't know how I made it through I'm doing my first master's degree at this time. I barely make it through. Like I will myself, I think, on sheer adrenaline to make it to classes and to write papers at night. And the rest of the day, I'm just an anxious, panicky, symptomatic mess, really loathing a lot of my life. I've never felt that way before, but I'm dizzy all day long. And after all of these tests are exhausted and I've deteriorated to such a point, my parents are very concerned about me. My father says he thinks I'm going to get admitted. I don't think, retrospectively, from a place of relative calm, I still don't think that was true, but it was a scary thing to hear. My mother is very concerned about me, and she says, can we double prong this? She goes, let's today call every psychiatrist and therapist, I think, in the phone book. I think psychiatrist. I think she wanted to see me medicated. And she goes, let's call every, and that's who I saw first, was a psychiatrist. She goes, let's call every psychiatrist in the phone book and in the internet that we can find and have someone see you. And I say, okay, I'll see anyone at this point. I don't think it's anxiety. But one, I can rule this out by seeing them. Two, I have anxiety about the condition, and that would be fine to treat. And so we do this, and I go and I see the therapist, the psychiatrist, and she says, yeah, I think it's anxiety. I tell her what I'm going through. Could this really be anxiety? But I wasn't consciously anxious about anything. And she says, yeah, it can be. And she goes, and furthermore, I think it is because you are, and I quote, the most tightly wound person I have ever seen. So right now, just take a pause. If you're watching this video because somewhere in your mind is, can I get better from my anxiety? The answer is yes. And I don't say that as a platitude just to make you feel better. I say that as a valid medical inference that if I'm the worst case scenario, according to this, she's not, just say it. She's not incredibly young. She's been doing this for a while, and she thinks I'm the worst she's seen in this regard. Then statistically, you're better than me, or than I was. If the hardest case can be fixed, then the easier cases, which are you, can be fixed. And there's no reason that harder cases than me that I'm sure are out there can't be fixed as well. So the answer is yes, you can be fixed. If I could, I think anybody can. So she gives me a drug cocktail. She gives me escitalopram, also known as Lexapro, and clonazepam, also known as Klonopin. And now I told you, I'm 8, 12, 14 hours of dizziness and vertigo all day, every day. Except oddly when I take walks, and there's something to that because exercise matters. That'll kind of, and then once I get still, it comes roaring back. And so I take the drug cocktail that night. I crash. It just, it's very sedating, I guess, and I fall asleep. First easy night's sleep I've had in a while. And the next day, I am 90% better in terms of the physical symptoms. I have a little residual dizziness, which I think is just my brain trying to readjust because every day it's like the world felt like a rocking boat, and I had to adjust my walking to that and my vision to that, and I think I'm just kind of recalibrating to having a healthy mind. I had seen a neurologist around the same time, and he said, as I mentioned earlier, and he said, you might have an irregularity with your vestibular nerves, but you have anxiety too. And he said, he looked at, let me rewind a little bit. There's a point where I'm seeing my medical doctor before I saw the psychiatrist. And I said, do you think I have MS after we've gone through everything? And he goes, no, and do not look that up because it'll scare the pants off you. And I don't think that's what you have. And so I look it up, and it's completely uncharacteristic of what I have. MS is actually it's not characteristic in most regards for what I have. But yes, people with MS can be dizzy amongst 400 other things. And so that's what I have. And the neurologist, he says, no, I looked at your brain scans. There's no signs of demyelination. You don't have MS. You might have an irregularity with your vestibular nerves. That's non-fatal. We can treat the symptoms. But I think it's anxiety. And I said, can anxiety do this? And this neurologist says, yes, anxiety can reproduce any physical symptom. So if you're wondering, do I have anxiety, or could anxiety be causing this? The answer is yes. Later on, I'll do a video on every physical manifestation of anxiety I've had. And so I make sure to backtrack and bring that up because after the psychiatrist gets me on meds, down the hall in the same practice, she has a cognitive behavioral therapist she wants me to see. And so I see her and I figure out a number of things. One, we pick up on this pattern of transition that the first mini season, the 2011 one, was when I was going to graduate. The second one was when I was going to graduate, when I was going to move, and also at this time my wife and I are trying to have a child. She's like, this happens to you when you're facing immense change. And I said, okay, 2 data points. I want more, but that's plausible. And I'm not mean or anything, but I'm saying, I'm still skeptical that this is anxiety. I'm thinking maybe the medications you gave me off-label accidentally cured me of something else or took away the symptoms of something else. And I go through, and this is her plan, cognitive behavioral therapy. So I need to reorient my thinking because I have gone through months where every time I have this problem, my doctor tells me and this is not his fault. This is how we do the testing. This isn't about blame. But I have learned now to associate my symptoms with terrible health things, right? It's like, okay, let's check for heart problems. Let's check for blood vessel problems. Let's check for blood diseases. Let's check for brain cancer, other brain issues, epilepsy, right? Every single time I see the doctor with my complaints, it's let's go check for this awful thing. And so actually I find myself thinking that way now when I get a cold, when I get an ache, when I feel, a lump or something in my body. And everyone's body is lumpy and squishy and hard and soft all at the same time. Anytime something is different in my body or in how I sense things, I jump to some disease and I go on the internet and research it. And the therapist tells me you can't do that. That is you're going through a number of what we call cognitive distortions. It's basically logical fallacies for processing your own emotions and thoughts. So it's not based on anything rational, and it produces it leads you to negative consequences, negative thoughts, negative conclusions. And so we have cognitive behavioral therapy to change and alter how I think about things for a healthy and reorient it into healthy thoughts and healthy behaviors. This is extremely helpful. And the first thing is to get off the internet. If that's something you're doing, stop. I'll tell you now, as somebody, as a scholar now, I recently earned my doctorate. I'll talk about my field probably later in another video, but I know enough to know this. Websites such as Right Diagnosis and WebMD, this is not nefarious, but they are biased because they're about illness and clinical significance. So they tell you what these symptoms mean so not only are they non-specific and they're not an actual doctor, but they only tell you what these symptoms mean in terms of them being clinically significant, meaning as they relate to a certain known illness. But people get headaches and lumps and stiffness and tingling and all these sorts of things for no major reason sometimes. All the time. Most of the time even. And by the very nature of these websites, they don't exist to tell you that because these are websites about illness in the same way that news websites don't tell you about where nothing happened today, right? Because by their nature, they are news websites. So that's one thing. Get off of it. She says, I find this interesting, and I've seen in research, in secular research, people will be skeptical of this, but I've seen in secular research, been to the conferences, participated in some of it, and read the academic journals, peer-reviewed journals. She says, I know very little about religion. However, your spiritual side is important, and that's something you need to work on. And I don't know. She's kind of upfront. I kind of don't know what that means. And I'm a born again Christian, and so I said I've got that covered. But I'll be sure to re-examine those areas of my life and make sure I'm living that out right. And she goes, okay, good. That's on you. She says exercise. For a number of reasons. It's a good time to clear the mind. It burns off nervous energy. The chemicals that it puts in your body, that it helps your body produce, are all good for your brain, all good for anxiety and depression and stress. And it uses up the cortisol and adrenaline or whatever these negative chemicals are, right, for your mental health. So it brings in the good and it pumps out the bad. And I will say, yes, exercise has changed my life. It sometimes feels a little hard for people with anxiety at first. Push through it. It's worth it. There's exposure. So exposure to certain fears, facing it, managing it, kind of this idea of radical acceptance that when you go through these periods of time, say, okay, what if I am sick? I'll cope. I'll treat. I'll manage. I'll maybe even be cured. And accept this as a reality of life, as at least a real possibility, while not using the cognitive distortions to say that this is definitely what's happening with you. So let's see, what would I go over? We had CBT, we had faith, we had exercise. Oh, she says, find a creative outlet. And I really struggled with this for years. And so I go through this for a number of months. And now, remember, I was the most tightly wound person my psychiatrist had ever seen. And In a matter of months, it'll be different for everyone. So if you don't get better in months, don't give up. But in a matter of months, she says, graduate from the therapy. So for those of you that are radically skeptical, they're not trying. No, it's not true that they're trying to lock you in to make money. She said, stop giving me your money now. You've graduated. You have the tools to cope with anxiety. Anyway, I get better. I move. I enter my PhD program. My wife gets pregnant. We have a son, and my psychiatrist says, "Yeah, you don't need to be on the meds anymore." And I get off, right? So no, it's not true that they're all trying to lock you in on meds and make money as a part of a big pharma conspiracy. Now, trust me, there's stuff I hate about the medical industry. I'm not an apologist for them. Please don't put NWO agent in my comments, unless of course you're talking about the Hogan, Hall, and Nash NWO, and then it's for life, brother. For the 8 people who get that reference. But no, so I'm telling people, medication may be a part of your treatment plan. It was for mine, and it's not a forever thing. There are people who do stay on medication for the rest of their life, and they're okay, and they're happy. But for me, it doesn't have to be, and it wasn't for me. And therapy was not. And so I'm okay. Now, during this whole process, I deteriorate very, very badly for a while before I start getting treatment. Barely surviving grad school, barely surviving life. My family's all worried about me. Anxiety and the symptoms that it produces consume my day. So I guess here are some of the 2 concluding points. I want to know, well, one is just you've gone through something like this and you've learned that somebody else has, and yeah, it's normal. What you're experiencing is normal for someone with anxiety. Can you get better? Yes, because somebody who was treated as a worst case scenario got better as well. You want to know, could my physical symptoms be anxiety? Yes, that was the opinion of a great team of doctors that I went through this with, and it's been my own personal experience. And I'll share a video later on where I talk about every physical symptom that anxiety has given me. And so I recover completely, and I go on through a PhD, parts of a PhD. Well, yes, I go through my PhD program, and I have a child, and move 2 or 3 times within the city after that, all as a normal person with maybe at this point I'm more of a worrywart than other people perhaps, but I don't have that kind of anxiety anymore, and I'm much better. Now I'll talk about my continuing anxiety journey in future videos. Because I relapsed twice. Now, so you might be somebody who used to have anxiety and you're going through it again, or you're worried that it might come back. What I have found is that, yes, it does come back, and that's not good news for people. It comes back for me. For some people, it does not come back. And I am optimistic that I will reach a point that it will never come back again. But each time it came back, it was much easier to handle than the previous times. The symptoms were less intense. So I never, ever went back to the 8+ hours of vertigo per day, right? If I have dizziness or vertigo, it's 3 minutes max, and it's really, really rare. I don't have days where I can't function. It's just so much better than the past, and so because you learn the tools and you carry them forward. So there's good news ahead. I hope this video has been helpful for somebody. I just want to open up a conversation, and I find it therapeutic to reflect on my own experiences. So maybe no one will watch this, but if you do, you want to comment, you want to ask a question, I'm happy to correspond. Thank you for your time. I will be in touch with you soon, talking about step 2 and season 2 and season 3, as I like to refer to them, in my anxiety journey, and where I'm at now, and probably some topical videos as well. Should this go to plan, I'm also trying to start an eclectic channel. So I'll have like an anxiety series. I might have a series where I talk about some of the scholarly things I'm involved with. Another series where I talk about personal hobbies, pro wrestling, video games, the news, politics, that sort of stuff. That's kind of my goal. It's kind of weird, but I might start the channel about everything if people are interested in watching. So take care. God bless. See you soon. Thanks.